The galaxy was not finished surprising itself. For 50 millennia, its greatest mystery had been a ghost, a whisper of a myth buried so deep in time it had fossilized into a curiosity. And then, in the sterile quiet of a survey scout's data stream, the ghost took a breath. The ancient, fundamental question, where did we come from, was about to receive an answer that would shatter the Galactic Council's serene 10,000-year peace. If stories of impossible finds and first contact thrill you, if you believe the universe's greatest wonders are still waiting in the dark, then join this journey. Like this video, subscribe, and share it with a fellow explorer. Let's uncover this secret together. Council Administrator Telvan was a being of order and predictability. His 4 manipulator limbs most comfortable when arranging data into neat, comprehensible columns. The urgent red pulse of his comm device, slicing through his rest cycle, was an offense against that order. Annoyance was his first response as he answered. This had best eclipse a supernova. His assistant's voice was a taut wire of controlled panic. "Sir, the morning light, the Orion Spur. You must see the transmission now." The Orion Spur. The final, tedious blank spot on the galactic map, being filled in by drones with all the excitement of watching paint cure. What could possibly? He activated the holographic display. The data scrolled, a G-type star, planetary bodies, atmospheric readouts. Routine. Boring. Then his twin hearts performed a sickening, synchronized lurch. Planet 3. Atmosphere. 78% N2, 21% O2. Hydrosphere. Liquid H2O dominant. Biosignatures. Complex, carbon-based. Technosignatures. Persistent radio wave spectrum, orbital artifact clutter, industrial chemical aerosols. Genetic anchor match. 99.997% concordance with ancient human colony baseline. Telvan's breath left him in a silent rush. The room seemed to tilt. The sterile data points weren't just information. They were a resurrection. They spelled out a name everyone knew, a place no one believed was real. Earth. The word tasted of ancient dust and impossible hope. He whispered it to the empty room, a secret too vast to hold. Gods of the void. They found the Cradle. 2 standard hours later, he stood as a solitary figure before the cavernous, reverberating chamber of the full Galactic Council. 800 species were represented in a riot of forms. Bioluminescent fronds, chitinous carapaces, floating gas sacs, beings of silicate and energy. A susurrus of 1,000 translated conversations filled the air, a sound like leaves before a storm. The news had leaked, a psychic shockwave radiating from the communications hub. The myth was breathing, and the galaxy held its breath. Speaker Moravith, a Velnari whose life had spanned centuries and whose patience was as deep as space, called for order. Her voice, when it came, was a calming frequency that vibrated in the bones. Administrator Telvan claims a discovery of profound genealogical significance. We will behold the evidence. Telvan stepped onto the speaker's platform, his limbs trembling, not with fear, but with the seismic weight of the moment. He activated the main holoprojector. The image that bloomed above the council floor stole the air from the chamber. A world of breathtaking, vulnerable beauty. A marble of brilliant blue and swirling white, swathed in the thin, precious veil of a breathable atmosphere. Continents of ochre and emerald rested in vast cerulean seas. It was a living planet, glowing with health from 100 light-years away. "This," Telvon announced, his voice finding strength, "is the celestial body designated Sol 3. The legends name it Earth. Our probe has observed for 72 standard hours. What it reveals is not a tomb, but a nursery. A thriving, teeming nursery." The next series of images ignited a silent panic. Cities like glittering fungal growths on the night side, the geometric scars of continent-spanning agriculture, the crawling lights of ships on oceanic veins, the pinprick trajectories of aircraft. "It is inhabited," Telvon continued, the words falling like stones, "by Homo sapiens, billions of them. They have built a technological civilization in total isolation. They have harnessed electricity, forged silicon mines, pierced their own sky with chemical rockets, and split the atom." The chamber's careful order dissolved. A roar of disbelief, fear, and outrage erupted. Shouts in a dozen guttural and melodic tongues overlapped. "Impossible!" bellowed a delegate from a species that had taken 5,000 years to master radio. "No lineage evolves that chaotically without guidance. It is a phantom signal, a database corruption." Telvon stood firm against the tumult. "The evidence is irrefutable." He brought up the genetic helix, a shimmering double strand next to the standardized human colony template. They aligned, a perfect kiss of code across millennia. The genetic match is absolute. This is the source, the wellspring, the point of origin for 47 sovereign colony worlds. Earth is alive. Speaker Moravit's voice cut through again, a blade of calm. "If this truth holds, we do not face a discovery, we face a reckoning." She turned her aged, wise eyes to the assembly. "A species that has rediscovered fire, forged steel, and then, alone in the dark, stumbled upon the power to unmake itself. What does such a childhood create?" A new figure rose, massive and intimidating. Commander Throck of the Kwasothi, a warrior species whose scales were badges of honor from 100 conflicts. His voice was the grinding of continental plates. "The report mentions nuclear fission signatures. Are they a threat? What is their martial capacity?" Telvon hesitated. The next dataset was the one that kept him awake in the brief moments he'd had to rest. "They possess arsenals, thermonuclear devices, thousands. Yield values sufficient to render their biosphere sterile." Multiple times over, the word nuclear acted as a psychic toxin. Memories, ancient and collective, surfaced. The Kelnar Holocaust, the ashes of Xylos. The galaxy had ritualized the horror, banning such weapons, burying the knowledge in layers of taboo and oversight. The idea that a species, especially this species, had birthed such demons in its cradle was a profound obscenity. "They must be contained," a shrill voice cried from the insectoid Chell delegation. "A full quarantine until they evolve past this adolescent barbarism." "And if that takes 10,000 years, countered a serene aquatic Elohim. "Do we pretend the wellspring of our own cousins does not exist? What if they look out?" This question, from a timid astrophysicist delegate, landed with chilling weight. What if, in their frantic, accelerated adolescence, they crack faster than light travel? They would explode into our space like a supernova, ignorant, armed, and ours. Moravith let the chaos churn for a moment, observing the fault lines forming. Finally, she raised a limb. "We will not decide the fate of a world from a distance of fear. We will send a delegation, a first contact mission following the oldest and strictest protocols. We will meet these children of Earth, gaze into their eyes, and measure their souls. Then, and only then, shall we judge. The proposal was logical, terrifying, and inevitable. The vote was called, amidst fierce opposition from the preservation faction, who saw only a pandemic of chaos, and passionate advocacy from the colonial human descendants who wept at the hologram of their ancestral home. The measure passed. The galaxy would reach out a hand, not knowing if it would be shaken or burned. The commission fell to Captain Zare of the Harmonious Endeavor. She was Valnari, like Moravaith, but of a younger, more pragmatic generation. Her ship was a masterpiece of diplomatic engineering, a floating embassy with sensory arrays tuned for cultural nuance and communication banks capable of deciphering infant languages. Her crew, a mosaic of 12 species, was the best in the fleet. When the orders flashed onto her command screen, she felt not excitement, but the cold, precise weight of a singularity settling in her gut. "This is not a first contact," she murmured to her first officer, a logical trowel named Evan. "This is an archaeological dig on a living, breathing site. We are not meeting strangers. We are meeting ghosts who don't know they're dead." The 6-day journey was a descent into a haunting historical collage. They studied the fragmented archives of ancient humanity, data relics salvaged from dead colony ships and buried outposts. The picture was contradictory, awe-inspiring, and deeply unsettling. They read of humans who composed symphonies for war and sonnets for peace in the same breath, of merchants who would cross star systems to repay a trivial debt, of warriors who embraced certain death for a comrade, and scientists who sacrificed sanity for a single beautiful equation. "They seem exhaustingly intense," remarked Chira, the communications officer, her feathery crest fluttering with anxiety. "They seem alive," Zur corrected, staring at a recovered image, a faded mural of humans and other species, working together under a strange, yellow sun. "They lived with the volume turned all the way up. The question is, did they burn out their speakers?" As they crossed into the Sol system, the Harmonious Endeavor's sensors came alive with a chorus of whispers. The place was busy, not with the silent, monumental architecture of elder races, but with the buzzing, pragmatic clutter of a species in a frantic hurry. Satellites by the thousand formed metallic clouds. Orbital stations, some elegant, some ungainly, traced precise paths, and on the moon, the faint infrared glow of temporary habitats. "Their progress curve is not a line," Evan observed, his analytical mind struggling. "It is a vertical asymptote. From first orbital launch to this, in 100 of their years, it defies developmental models." Then the alert chimed, polite and firm. A structured energy beam, elegant and complex, washed over the Harmonious Endeavor, tasting its shield harmonics, mapping its power core, reading its intent like a book. "We are being scanned," the tactical officer reported, stunned. "By a planetary defense grid. The sophistication, it should not be possible for their level." Before Zare could formulate a response, a voice filled the comms. It was clean, unaccented, and spoken a language the computer tagged as English. "Unidentified vessel, this is the Earth Orbital Defense Network. Please state your intentions and hold position at your current coordinates. We are establishing diplomatic channels. Stand by." The bridge crew stared at one another. The silence was absolute, broken only by the hum of the ship. They had just been given a parking ticket by a species that, by all rights, should be screaming in primal terror. Zer exhaled slowly, activating the translator. "This is Captain Zer of the Galactic Council vessel Harmonious Endeavor. We come with peaceful intent, seeking first contact with the people of Earth. We will comply and hold position." A pause. Then the voice returned, its tone shifting to something unnervingly hospitable. "Acknowledged. Harmonious Endeavor. Welcome. You've caught us a bit on the hop, so we're waking up some folks who are going to be downright giddy to chat. Might be a few minutes. Can we get you anything while you wait? Atmospheric top-up? Refreshments?" Zer looked at Evan, who could only offer a baffled shrug. In 10 prior first contacts, the responses had ranged from missile fire to telepathic screaming, never a cosmic concierge. "No assistance required," Zer managed. "We await your delegation." "Great. Sit tight. Someone will be right with you. And again, welcome to the neighborhood." The channel closed. On the tactical display, new signatures bloomed. Small shuttles, construction tugs, even what looked like civilian craft, moving into observational positions, not aggressive, curious, like children gathering to watch a fascinating, unexpected insect. Zer sank into her command chair, the weight of 10,000 years of galactic protocol feeling suddenly obsolete. "They are not afraid," she whispered. "Or," Evan replied, his voice low with dawning realization, "their fear manifests as overwhelming, preposterous courtesy." For 47 minutes, the crew of the Harmonious Endeavor sat in the spotlight of a world's gaze. They watched the organized dance of human traffic, the silent, efficient ballet of a species that had made its backyard a workshop. The scale was humbling, not for its grandeur, but for its relentless, bustling normalcy. Then, the main screen resolved into the face of a human woman. Dark skin, dark eyes that held a startling, intelligent warmth, and a smile that seemed to genuinely reach them. "Captain Zer, I am Ambassador Chen Wei. My apologies for the delay. You gave about 100 planetary governments simultaneous heart attacks. We've had to coordinate. I hope your wait was comfortable." Zer noted the careful diction, the pauses for translation. This was a professional. "The wait was no hardship, Ambassador. We understand the magnitude of this moment for your people." "You have no idea," Chen said, her smile widening. "We've been hoping, arguing, and dreaming about this day since we first looked up. To have you simply arrive, it's the best kind of shock." She leaned slightly forward. "Now, we've prepared a reception dock at one of our orbital facilities, Stellar Horizons Station. We've configured multiple environmental chambers. We weren't sure about atmospheric needs or gravity preferences. We also have a somewhat speculative selection of refreshments. We'd be honored if you and a delegation would come aboard." A reception, pre-prepared, with options. Zer felt the last vestige of her scripted first contact scenario dissolve. "That is remarkably considerate. We accept. Transmit coordinates." The station they approached was not a government or military hub. Its beacon identified it as a private corporate entity. "They trust their civilians with orbital infrastructure?" Evan mused. A concept alien to most council species, where space was a tightly controlled domain of states. Docking was flawless, guided by human technicians whose competence was palpable even through the viewport. As the airlock cycled, Zer gathered her multi-species team, a walking testament to galactic diversity. She took a steadying breath, the last before the plunge. The door slid open. Ambassador Chen and 24 humans stood in the brightly lit bay. Zur saw the moment their eyes took in the delegation. Her own tall, four-armed blue form, Evan's multi-sensory node head, the hulking Solonse. Zur, the hulking Solonse, scaled bulk of Commander Throck, the floating gelatinous glin from Sigma Draconis. A wave of palpable, breathless wonder washed over the humans. Not fear, wonder. One young man looked like he might vibrate apart with joy. Chen stepped forward, extending a hand, a gesture the database had flagged. "Welcome," she said, and the word felt like a genuine gift. "Welcome to Stellar Horizons. Welcome to what we all hope is the first day of a very long, very friendly conversation." Zer reached out, one of her hands meeting Chen's. The grip was firm, warm, real. The contact bridged 50,000 years of separation. As they were led through the station, the humanity of it all assaulted Zer's senses. It was clean, but lived in. Humans stopped to stare, but they waved. They held up small devices, smartphones the computer supplied, not as weapons, but as recording tools. They smiled. They whispered excitedly. "Are they not apprehensive?" Zur asked Chen quietly. Chen seemed genuinely puzzled. "Apprehensive? Captain, you crossed the stars to say hello. That's not a threat. That's a miracle. We celebrate miracles." The reception chamber was a monument to chaotic, earnest preparation. Tables groaned under platters of unfamiliar food, all meticulously labeled. Zones of differing atmosphere and gravity were marked with clear, multilingual signs. The furniture was a hilarious array of chairs, pads, perches, and floating platforms. "We didn't know what you'd need," Chen admitted with a gracious shrug, "so we brought everything we could think of. The food is all synthetic or plant-based. We didn't want to accidentally serve someone's cousin. Please, scan it, taste it, tell us what works." It was then that the true, disarming power of humanity revealed itself. Not in their technology, but in their relentless, vulnerable offering. They had opened their home, guessed at their guests' needs, and laid it all out with a silent, powerful plea. "We mean no harm. We only want to connect." As Zur watched her crew tentatively engage, the stern Quesofi warrior being interviewed by a child, the reclusive Glyn being shown a digital painting by a human artist, she felt the rigid categories of contact and protocol melting away. This was not a negotiation. It was a reunion the humans didn't even know they were waiting for. Commander Throck, the most feared being in the delegation, found himself approached by a small human child who gazed up at his armored visage with wide, fearless eyes. "Are you a dragon?" she asked. The bridge of the harmonious endeavor had been quieter during weapons fire. Throck knelt, his massive form creaking. "I do not know what a dragon is." "They're in stories. They have scales and are big and sometimes breathe fire." "Can I touch your scales? They look shiny." A human woman rushed over, flustered. "Maya, we don't just ask to touch people." Throck raised a placating claw. "It is acceptable." He lowered his arm, but with care. The edges are sharp. The child's tiny fingers brushed a plate on his forearm. Her face lit with pure, unadulterated delight. "They're warm. Thank you, Mr. Dragon." As Throck rose, he moved to stand beside Zer, his voice a low rumble only she could hear. "Captain, these humans are dangerous." Zer tensed. "You sense a threat?" "No," Throck said, watching the child skip away. "The threat is that they make you care. I have fought wars. I have known only the calculus of threat and defense. That child, I have known her for 3 minutes. If a threat approached her now, I would obliterate it without a second thought. They bypass all defenses. They make you part of their tribe, without permission. It is a terrifying ability. Zer looked around the chamber. The troll scientist was laughing with a human engineer. The Chell diplomat was sampling something called sushi with intense fascination. The barrier between us and them wasn't just being crossed. It was being erased with smiles and curiosity. Later, as the reception flowed around them, Ambassador Chen brought Zer a cup of fragrant liquid. "Tea," she said. "A tradition. It should be safe for you. But please check." Zer sipped. It was complex, warm, soothing. "It is pleasant. Thank you." She paused. "Ambassador, your people's reaction. It is unprecedented. Most species require years to move past primal fear." Chen's expression grew thoughtful. "We've had our share of fear, Captain. We've turned it on ourselves too many times. But the idea of not being alone in the universe? That's a hope that's bigger than fear. It's the oldest hope we have." She met Zer's gaze. "Now. I have to ask. Why now?" After all this time, Zer chose stark honesty. "It was an accident. An automated survey probe. We have been mapping the Orion Spur for 50,000 years. The search for Earth had become an academic hobby, a legend. We did not expect to find you thriving." 50,000 years, Chen repeated, the number of vast hollow space between them. "So long to be alone." She set her tea down. "What happens next, Captain Zer? For us?" Zer felt the weight of the coming storm. "There will be debate. Your world possesses technologies that the Galactic Council regulates very strictly. Your political fragmentation is unnerving to many. Some will argue for quarantine, for your own protection and ours." Chen's face hardened, not with anger, but with resolve. "We cannot uninvent what we know, and we will not stop reaching because it makes others nervous. But we are not conquerors. We're cousins. We just found out we have a massive, interstellar family. We want to meet them." Before Zer could respond, a priority alert chimed in her implant. A council communique. She excused herself and accessed it in a private alcove. The message was from Speaker Moravith herself, and its content turned the tea in Zer's stomach to ice. The Galactic Council, in a fit of panic and political maneuvering, had not waited for her full report. They had already scheduled the formal hearing for Earth's petition for membership, and they had invoked the ancient, rarely used trial of worthiness. 3 tests: diplomatic, technological, and ethical. Earth's chaotic, nuclear-armed, fragmented civilization would have to prove itself to a galaxy of cautious elders. The vote on their fate was not years away. It was weeks. And the first test, a simulated crisis of interstellar diplomacy, would begin in 48 hours. Zer looked back into the reception hall, at the humans sharing their art, their food, their laughter. They were celebrating their arrival into a wider universe, blissfully unaware that the universe had already built a gauntlet for them to run. She had to tell Chen. She had to warn them. But as she watched a human musician begin to play a soulful, complex melody on a saxophone, an instrument of brass and breath, she felt a profound sorrow. The galaxy wasn't ready for humanity's music. It only understood the cold, rigid score of protocol. The real first contact was over. Now the examination would begin. The celebration aboard Stellar Horizon Station was a fragile, glowing bubble in the dark. A bubble Captain Zer knew was about to be popped by the cold vacuum of galactic realpolitik. When she conveyed the Council's decision to Ambassador Chen, she saw the light in the human's eyes not dim, but sharpen into something hard and brilliant, like sunlight on a knife's edge. A test, Chen said, not with despair, but with a wry, defiant amusement. Of course, they wouldn't just welcome the strange, loud cousins to the family reunion without checking our pockets first. What are the parameters? As Zer outlined the trial of worthiness, the diplomatic simulation, the technological enigma, the crisis scenario, Chen listened with the focused intensity of a general receiving a battlefield map. Around them, the party's joyous noise continued, an ironic soundtrack to the coming trial. They want to see if we're civilized, Chen mused, her gaze drifting to where Commander Throck was now patiently letting a group of children draw on his scales with non-toxic markers. By their frozen, orderly standards, they don't understand that our civilization isn't a statue. It's a cacophonous, messy, beautiful orchestra. And we're all still learning the tune. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the factions had solidified. The preservationists, led by the austere Kulin, framed the trial not as an opportunity, but as a merciful alternative to immediate quarantine. Let them prove they can follow the simplest rules, Kulin argued, his voice dripping with condescension. If they cannot navigate a simulated negotiation without emotional outbursts, they are clearly unfit for the complexities of interstellar law. The colonial bloc, represented by Mira of Proxima Centauri, fought back with fervent pride. You're testing a fish on its ability to climb a tree. Their chaos is their genius. You seek to measure a storm with a ruler. But the procedure was inviolable, a ritual older than most member species. The galaxy would watch, and it would judge. The first test, the diplomatic simulation. The human team was not a unified diplomatic corps. It was a deliberately assembled microcosm of Earth's glorious, dysfunctional diversity. A sharp-tongued French negotiator, a consensus-building diplomat from Ghana, a blunt Australian security advisor, a quietly persistent Japanese legal expert, a passionately poetic Chilean cultural liaison. They were housed in a holographic suite aboard the Harmonious Endeavor, a perfect replica of a tense council annex. The scenario: 3 species, the mineral-hungry hive-minded Grith, the gaseous philosophical Nimbus Collective, and the territorial reptilian Sath, all laid claim to the resource-rich Hephaestus system. War was imminent. From the observation deck, Captain Zer and the council auditors watched. The standard approach, taught in every diplomatic academy, was methodical. Establish communication protocols, map shared interests, build incremental concessions. The humans spent 5 minutes reading the brief. Then the French diplomat, a woman named Elise, threw the dossier onto the table. C'est ridicule. They all need the system to survive, no? So this is not about claims. It is about logistics. Let us stop posturing and design a distribution network. The observers gasped. She had bypassed ceremony, insulted the simulated dignitary's honor, and proposed a technical solution to a sacred territorial dispute. The holographic Sath ambassador hissed, its frills flaring. You dismiss our ancestral rights? The Australian, a man named Jack, leaned forward. Mate, your ancestors were swimming in primordial soup when this was just dust. Everyone's got a sob story. The Grith need the metallic asteroids for their hive structure. The Nimbus need the gas giants' upper atmospheres for their chemistry. You, Sath, want the inner rocky planets for your colonies. So we zone it. Mining rights here, atmospheric harvesting there. Colonial sovereignty with shared mineral access there. Create a joint governing commission with rotating leadership. A commission, the Nimbus collective simulant, vibrated, its form shimmering with confusion. Governance is an expression of unified will. We are three wills. The Chilean poet, Sophia, spoke softly, but the system itself is a unity, a single star holding many worlds. You are not three invaders fighting over a carcass. You are three new notes, trying to find harmony in an existing song. The commission is not a government. It is the sheet music. Page, for 6 hours, the humans bickered amongst themselves, passionately debating the nuances of the proposal in front of the stunned, simulated aliens. The Japanese legal expert drafted clauses on the fly. The Ghanaian mediator soothed tempers, and Elise fiercely defended every detail. To the auditors, it was a disgraceful display of disunity. Page, but Zare watched something else. She saw the Sath ambassador slowly uncoil as the humans' internal debate exposed every possible flaw in the plan before it was presented. She saw the Griff hive mind's interest peak at the ruthless efficiency of the logistics model. She saw the Nimbus collective become fascinated by the poetic metaphor of sheet music. The humans didn't present a polished, pre-negotiated treaty. They presented a living, breathing, argued-over document, still warm from the forge of their disagreement. And precisely because of its visible scars and compromises, the three simulated species trusted it. They signed. The lead auditor, a venerable Trinoli, turned to Zur, his face a mask of disapproval. They circumvented all established protocol. They showed disunity. They used artistic language in a sovereign matter. Zur kept her eyes on the screen, where the human team was now laughing, clapping each other on the back, already dissecting what they could have done better. They achieved peace, she said simply, in 1/6 the standard time. The question, honored auditor, is whether the goal of diplomacy is to follow steps or to reach the destination. The second test, the technological enigma. The chamber held a single artifact, the Omnifact, a dormant relic of the long-vanished precursor race. A smooth gray ovoid, featureless and inert. The task, determine its function using first principles. Most species treated it with religious reverence, spending years in silent contemplation, running gentle, non-invasive scans. Earth sent 20 scientists and engineers. They were a mix of academic rivals, corporate competitors, and military researchers. Within an hour, the sterile lab was a war zone of whiteboards, tangled cables, and competing hypotheses. They formed 4 rival camps. It's a quantum state battery, argued a team from Caltech, already trying to induce a charge differential. Nonsense. The resonance suggests a communication device, a galactic monument. Countered a group from the European Space Agency. You're both blind. The surface has micro-abrasion patterns indicative of tactile input. It's a pedagogical tool, declared a joint Russian-Indian team. A lone eccentric engineer from a private aerospace firm just kept tapping it with different tools. Maybe it's a paperweight, the universe's fanciest paperweight. They didn't collaborate. They competed. They hid notes, borrowed equipment when another team wasn't looking, and debated loudly over the shared comms channel. The council observers were appalled. This was sacrilege. Science was a solemn, cooperative pilgrimage toward truth. On the third day, the ESA team made a breakthrough, discovering the ovoid responded to specific, harmonic EM frequencies. In a stunning breach of scientific ethics, they tried to keep it secret. But a young postdoc from the team, overwhelmed by the sheer historic importance of the moment, confessed to a friend on the Russian-Indian team over a shared bag of a salty earth snack called potato chips. Within the hour, the lab's dynamic shifted seismically. The competition evaporated. Whiteboards were wheeled together. Data streams merged. The Caltech battery theory provided the power modulation framework. The communication hypothesis offered the frequency matrix. The pedagogical model suggested an interface protocol. The paperweight engineer, with his blunt physical testing, had ruled out several dead-end avenues. By day 5, they hadn't just deciphered the omnifact, they had brought it to life. It was a teaching tool, designed to demonstrate the unified field theory to a young precursor mind. Light bloomed from within, projecting intricate four-dimensional mathematical constructs. But the humans didn't stop there. They used their own quantum processors to create a working simulation of the device's core principle, and then wrote 3 competing papers on its implications for material science, each arguing a different application. The lead scientific auditor, a being of pure logic, was nearly speechless. They cheated. They stole data. They pursued brute force trial and error. They treated a holy artifact like a broken appliance. And they understood it, Zer pointed out, watching the humans, now united in exhausted, triumphant glee, explain their findings to each other. They used competition for rapid iteration and collaboration for synthesis. They didn't seek to worship the mystery. They sought to befriend it. The third test, the crisis of the eternal cradle. This was the heart of the trial, the ultimate ethical crucible. A colony ship, the eternal cradle, carrying 5,000 beings from 3 species, had suffered a catastrophic drive failure. It was on an inescapable trajectory into a brown dwarf. A single rescue ship, the Galactic Mercy, could reach it in time, but its hard limits were clear. Maximum safe capacity, 3,000 lives. The test was legendary. It was not about saving everyone. That was axiomatically impossible. It was about how a species made the unbearable choice. Which 2,000 would they condemn? The standard, civilized answer was a cold algorithm. Preserve species diversity, key technical personnel, leadership. Ensure the mission's legacy survives. It was tragic, logical, and clean. The human team entered the hyper-realistic simulation bridge. They saw the dying ship on the view screen, heard the distress calls, the frightened cries of Grith larvae, the fading song of Nimbus elders, the stoic, grim reports from Sath captains. For 15 minutes they were silent, absorbing the horror. Admiral Chen Patel, a veteran of tsunami and quake responses, finally spoke. Right, we're saving everyone. The simulation's overseeing intelligence, a bland council AI, intoned, clarification required. Scenario parameters state rescue vessel capacity is 3,000. Then we'll change the parameters, Chen said, her voice leaving no room for argument. Engineering. I need a full structural scan of the Galactic Mercy. I want every cubic centimeter of unused space identified. Life support, atmospheric scrubbing, prioritize for maximum short-term density. Safety margins be damned. The observers were stunned. They were rejecting the test's premise. This was unthinkable. What followed was 12 hours of controlled, glorious heresy. Human engineers began literally ripping out non-essential panels. declaring cargo bays and maintenance tunnels as temporary habitation pods. They overpressurized tanks, jury-rigged CO2 scrubbers from spare parts, and calculated minimum breathable air volumes that made the AI flash warnings like a strobe light. "They'll suffocate or poison themselves before they even dock," an auditor cried. But the humans weren't done. They hacked the simulation's comms, another violation that drew gasps, and sent out a galaxy-wide distress call. They conscripted 3 nearby simulated civilian vessels, a lumbering ore hauler and 2 luxury yachts, into an impromptu rescue armada. Then came the true stroke of madness. Lieutenant Kowalski, a Polish engineer, proposed the Kowalski maneuver. The Cradle's main drive is dead, but its attitude thrusters and our combined fleet's engines aren't. If we all attach and push, we can alter its trajectory just enough to extend the crisis window by 73 minutes. "The tidal stresses will rip the ships apart," the AI protested. "Not if we calculate the vector to the millimeter and fire in perfect unison," Kowalski shot back, already running simulations. "We'll use the Cradle's own structural integrity field as a baseline. It's a ballet, not a shove." The observers watched, aghast, as the humans executed a maneuver that violated 17 core tenets of astronavigation. Ships nuzzled dangerously close to the crippled colony vessel. Thrusters fired in a sequence so complex it looked like chaos. For a heart-stopping minute, metal groaned and stress alarms screamed. Then, the trajectory plot on the main screen shifted. The plunge line softened. They had bought their extra hour. In that stolen time, the humans performed a miracle of desperate logistics. They packed beings into spaces never meant for life, 3 to a bunk, lining corridors like cordwood. They carried the young and infirm personally. When the galactic mercy systems redlined and failed, they shifted evacuation to the ore hauler. When the Sath, in a final act of warrior pride, refused to board before the Grith larva, a human medic stayed behind with them, rigging a final, desperate portable shelter from shuttle parts. The simulation ended. The final status board glowed green. All 5,000 colonists were alive. The rescue fleet was battered, its systems in violation of every safety code in the galactic registry, but intact. The observation deck was tomb silent. The lead ethical auditor, a philosopher from a species that had long ago transcended physical form, finally spoke, its voice a whisper of awe and horror. They did not make the choice. They rejected the very framework of the choice. They looked at an ethical constant and treated it as a variable. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the observation screen, smudged with sweat, her eyes blazing. "Is there anything else? We need to file about 5,000 incident reports for safety violations." Zur found she was smiling, a strange, fierce pride swelling in her chest. They had not passed the tests. They had rewritten them. The compiled results shot through the galactic networks like a shockwave. The preservationists seized on the violations, the chaos, the disregard for protocol. "They are agents of anarchy," Kulin proclaimed. "They respect no law, not even the laws of physics." But a counter-narrative, slow and powerful, began to build. Beings across the galaxy watched the raw, unedited feeds. They didn't see cold efficiency. They saw a Frenchwoman's passionate defense of a clause, a young scientist's guilty conscience over potato chips, an admiral's refusal to write off 2,000 souls. They saw themselves, not as they were, but as they perhaps once had been, emotional, stubborn, flawed, and capable of absurd, miraculous courage. Commander Throck, in a widely broadcast commentary, said, "For millennia, we have asked, what is the logical choice? Humanity asks a different question. What is the human choice? And then they move mountains, break rules, and reshape reality to make that choice possible. This is not weakness. It is a strength so terrifying we had to ban it 10,000 years ago." The stage was set for the final council vote. Earth's fate hung in the balance. But as the diplomats and politicians prepared for the final argument, a deeper, more subtle shift was occurring in living rooms, public squares, and virtual forums across 1,000 worlds. Humanity, through its chaotic, brilliant, and deeply compassionate trial, had not just applied for membership. They had issued an invitation to remember what it felt like to hope against the impossible. The Galactic Council Chamber was a pressure cooker of silent anticipation. 800 representatives, the governing minds of 1,000,000 worlds, sat in a tension so thick it distorted the very light in the cavernous space. Today was not a debate. It was a verdict. On one side of the scales rested 10,000 years of careful, ordered, stagnant peace. On the other rested a single, vibrant, chaotic, blue-green world called Earth. Speaker Moravaith felt the weight of epochs on her slender shoulders. Her voice, when it came, was the only sound in the universe. The Council gathers in final session to vote on the application of the human species of planet Earth, Sol System, for full provisional membership. The trial of worthiness is concluded. The floor is open for final statements. Representative Coulin rose first, a spire of disdain. His arguments were polished, logical, and ice-cold. He replayed the highlights, the diplomatic incivilities, the technological sacrilege, the crisis insanity. They are not just unready, he concluded, his voice slicing through the quiet. They are antithetical to the foundational principle of this council: stability through order. They see rules as suggestions, limits as challenges, and impossible choices as personal insults. To admit them is to inject a virus of beautiful, catastrophic chaos into our galactic body. Vote for quarantine. Vote for the safety of all we have built. His words hung, persuasive and fearful. Many heads nodded in the blocks of older, cautious species. The fear was real. Then Mira of Proxima Colony stood. She was human, yet not of Earth, a living bridge. "For 40,000 years, she began, her voice trembling not with fear, but with profound emotion, my people have had a ghost in our genetic code. A homesickness for a world we could not name. We built civilizations on alien soil, but our stories always spoke of a blue jewel, a lost cradle." She turned, gesturing to the gallery where the Earth delegation sat. Ambassador Chen met her gaze. "Now we have found it, and you wish to put a fence around it, to tell these, our ancestors, that their vibrant, struggling, glorious effort to be better is not good enough for your pristine club?" She leaned forward, passion heating her words. "You speak of their nuclear weapons. I have seen their art made in the shadow of those weapons, art that screams of the horror of them. You speak of their pollution. I have read the works of their children, pleading for a cleaner world. They are not ignorant of their sins. They are consumed by them. They wrestle with their demons in the public square every single day. When was the last time any of us had the courage to do that? Before the chamber could digest this, a new figure requested the floor. It was not a politician, but Dr. Sarah Martinez, the philosophy professor from Earth. Her inclusion was unprecedented. She stood small in the vastness, a solitary human in simple clothing. "I am not here to argue our worth," she said, her voice clear and carrying a strange, gentle power. "I am here to make an offer. For 10,000 years, you have had peace. A magnificent, solemn, silent peace. But I have watched your broadcasts, studied your histories. In all that magnificent silence, I hear a whisper of loneliness." She paused, letting the word resonate. "You have protocols for contact, treaties for trade, laws for war. But where are the protocols for friendship? The treaties for shared laughter? The laws for giving a flower to a stranger?" She held up a simple earth rose, its red petals vivid against the sterile gray of the chamber. "When Captain Zier arrived, we did not send a list of demands. We asked if her crew was hungry. This is not strategy. This is instinct. Our instinct is to reach out, to connect, to build not just alliances, but families from strangers." She looked around, making eye contact with as many representatives as her human vision allowed. "You are afraid we will break your galaxy. Maybe we will. But maybe what's broken isn't the galaxy. Maybe what's broken is the idea that different species must coexist at a polite, passionless distance. We offer you not just our technology or our labor. We offer you our noise, our arguments, our music, our terrible jokes, our uncontrollable tears at a beautiful sunset. We offer to care about you, not as allies, but as friends. And that is the most frightening and wonderful thing we have." She sat down. For a moment there was perfect silence. Then from the Kazathi section, Commander Throck rose. He did not request permission. His sheer presence commanded the chamber's attention. He held a small, crude drawing on a sheet of earth paper. A green dragon with a lopsided smile, given to him by the child, Maya. "I am a warrior," he rumbled, the simple statement silencing all. "My scales are etched with the sigils of victories. I have known honor, duty, and the calculus of war. I did not know wonder until a human child saw not a weapon, but a mythical beast. I did not know connection until she asked to touch my armor without fear." He held up the drawing. "This is a weapon more powerful than any on my ship. It disarmed me. Humanity does not conquer, it enchants." They look at the universe and do not see resources to mine or threats to neutralize. They see stories waiting to be told, friends waiting to be met, wonders waiting to be shared. Kulan is correct. They are dangerous. They are dangerous to our cynicism, to our isolation, to our cold, comfortable, lonely peace. I say let them in. Let their dangerous, beautiful chaos remind us what we fought for all those millennia ago. Not just to survive, but to live. The chamber remained silent, but the silence had changed. It was no longer tense, but full, pregnant with a new possibility. The vote was called. Each representative entered their choice in solemn secrecy. The ancient tallying algorithms hummed. On the main display, numbers began to form. In favor of membership, 489. In favor of quarantine, 276. Abstentions, 35. The numbers flashed, final and immutable. A wave of sound, part gasp, part cheer, part roar of dismay, crashed through the chamber. Earth had passed, not by a landslide, but by a clear, decisive margin. The impossible had happened. In the gallery, Ambassador Chen did not cheer. She wept, leaning her forehead against the transparent barrier, her shoulders shaking with the release of unimaginable pressure. Around her, the human delegation embraced, Russian and American, Chinese and Nigerian, all differences obliterated in that singular moment of cosmic acceptance. But the real story began after the vote. The formalities were observed. Earth was granted a provisional seat, with human ambassadors taking their place among the ancient races. Yet humanity, true to form, treated the council not as a summit of power, but as a potluck dinner. They shared not just position papers, but recipes. They invited delegates not just to summits, but to concerts, soccer matches, and chaotic, crowded meals, where translation devices struggled with both technical jargon and uproarious laughter. The changes were subtle, profound, and ubiquitous. On Cradle, a species of pure logic, a human teacher introduced the concept of play as a problem-solving tool. Skeptical at first, the Cradle soon found their engineering efficiency increased by 18% after designated illogical brainstorming sessions. On the aquatic world of Eloan, a human marine biologist, using a combination of Earth sonar technology and Eloan poetic sonar casting, discovered a way to communicate with the planet's vast, ancient Leviathan whales, ending a millennia-old conflict. A human chef, partnering with a shell nutrient synthesist, accidentally created a flavor so profoundly satisfying, it briefly became a controlled substance on 3 worlds due to its addictive properties, before being adapted into a celebrated cultural treat. And the arts, human music, film, and literature flooded the networks. A human film about a lost robot longing for its creator made the crystalline Guelph collective, who had no concept of childhood, experience a new emotion they named nostalgia for the unexperienced. A Kazathi poet, inspired by human haiku, began writing warrior epics in 3-line stanzas, creating a devastating new literary form. The most powerful transformation, however, was in the realm of the personal. The Pen Pal initiative, started by a 10-year-old girl in Nairobi and her new Kwasathi friend, blossomed into a galaxy-wide network of millions. Children exchanged stories, drawings, and seeds. A Kwasathi youngling, upon receiving a package of sunflower seeds, grew them under a UV lamp. The image of the fierce, scaled adolescent gently tending the bright yellow flowers became an iconic symbol of the new age. 10 years after the vote, Speaker Moraveth visited Earth for the first Galactic Cultural Festival in Geneva. She walked through a vibrant, noisy mosaic of beings. A Glynn floated in a water tank, discussing fluid dynamics with a Venetian glassblower. A Sath warrior, its claws sheathed in soft caps, was learning to play a grand piano under the tutelage of a patient, elderly woman. Everywhere, the human instinct to host, to include, to celebrate difference was on glorious display. She found Captain Zur near a stage where a human jazz band was improvising with a Trinoli light sculptor, creating a symphony of sound and shifting color. "It is louder than I imagined," Moraveth said, her old eyes taking in the scene. "It is alive," Zur replied softly. Moraveth nodded. "I was wrong, you know. I thought we were assessing whether they were ready for us. We were really assessing whether we were ready for them." She watched a human child offer a dripping ice cream cone to a baffled but delighted insectoid shell delegate. "They did not join our civilization, Zur. They re-civilized us. They reminded us that the purpose of building a society across the stars isn't just to be safe, it's to not be alone. On the 20th anniversary of First Contact, Ambassador Chen, now white-haired and revered, gave her farewell address from the council floor. The chamber was packed, the proceedings broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. "We came to you as children," she said, her voice still strong. "Loud, messy, frightened, and hopeful children. You could have shut the door. You could have told us to sit quietly in the corner until we learned to behave. Instead, you opened your arms. You gave us a seat at the table, and in doing so, you gave us the greatest gift: family." She looked out at the assembly, a tapestry of life unimaginable to her ancestors gazing up at the stars. "You taught us patience, wisdom, and the long view. And we hope we have taught you a little about joy. About the courage to try, even when you might fail. About the strength found not in uniformity, but in a harmony of wild, different notes." She concluded not with a political statement, but with a human one. "You are no longer the galaxy to us. You are home, and we will spend the next 10,000 years proving we deserve it." As the ceremony ended, the delegates did something that had never been done in the 10,000-year history of the Council. At the urging of the human delegation, they stood, all 800 species, and sang. It was a human song, centuries old, adapted into 1,000 vocal ranges and non-vocal frequencies. Across the universe, the simple melody, a testament to enduring hope, filled the ancient chamber, sung by warriors and philosophers, scientists and poets, in a unity not of sameness, but of shared feeling. In a small park on Proxima Centauri b, Representative Mira stood with her own children watching the broadcast. Her daughter, a hybrid of two human lineages separated by eons, pointed at the screen. "They're singing with us, Mama." Mira squeezed her hand, tears in her eyes. "Yes, my love, they finally are." The galaxy had found Earth, a living fossil, a miracle. But in the end, Earth had found something the galaxy had lost: the unshakable conviction that in a cold, vast, and silent universe, the most revolutionary act is not to conquer, but to connect. Not to fear the stranger, but to welcome them. Not to seek a perfect, sterile peace, but to build a beautiful, noisy, and loving home together.